Okay. And I actually did want to give a special shout out. We've got Peter Curry and Michael Assetti. Hopefully, I pronounced your names correctly. You'll be joining Frank this year out at Hadrian's Wall digging. So thank you for joining us here. And without further ado, I wanted to welcome Frank Giecco. He is the archaeological director of Uncovering Rome in Carlisle and technical director at Wardell Armstrong. Since 2017, he and his team have been excavating a high-ranking Roman building and a bathhouse in Carlisle, England, and it's the largest building ever found along Hadrian's Wall. He's got over 25 years of experience running and managing field archaeology projects throughout the UK and overseas. And he's a numismatist, that's a coin specialist for those who don't know. And he's built up significant expertise on the archaeology of Roman Britain. And as I said, he'll be speaking about the history of the site, of the bathhouse, how the site was found, and Hadrian's Wall in Carlisle, and talk about some of their most significant finds to date. So I am actually going to sort of hide myself and allow Frank to present. Hopefully everyone can see. Oh, and thanks everyone for piping in where you're from. So Frank, it's off to you.
Okay, well, thank you everyone. And I see a few familiar faces, so apologies for saying stuff you all know all too well. But the interesting bit for you guys will be the very end where we talk about what we're hoping to do, well, in the next 3 weeks, not long to go. So for the new people who don't know anything about the project, this first half is really aimed at you guys. So let's start. So we're based in Carlisle, which is one of these key locations on the Hadrianic frontier of northern England. We look at it now as mirroring Corbridge to the east, and both of them functioned as administrative hubs. Our site possibly had a slightly higher position than Corbridge, as it had the Alla Petriana, the prefect of which would have been the highest ranking Roman official on the wall zone. So Carlisle's got this really important position, not just on the western side of the wall, but probably of the wall in general. So this is our site in Carlisle. So our site is number 2. So the first thing that just screams out at you is it's almost absolutely midway between two forts. Number 1, which is Stanix, Uxulodunum, and number 3 to the south, which is Luguvallium, which is Carlisle's fort. The fort at Carlisle is the earlier establishment, built in the early 70s. I think 73 from memory or thereabouts. It's been dated quite well by dendrochronology, which is the dating of tree rings on preserved timbers. So Carlisle fort has had a lot of work done on it. Stanix fort to the north, very little done on it. A lot of it is still a bit of a mystery, the internal layout. We know it's the largest fort on the wall, and we know who was stationed there. So we've got 1,000-strong cavalry. And we know later on it's the Alla Petriana. So it's one of these forts that is stationed basically straddling the wall. So there would have been gates on the northern side of the wall, so cavalry could quickly counterattack north of the wall. So it's an interesting fort. And then we've got our site number 2, which is in this sort of area right behind Hadrian's Wall, between the Stane Gate, which was the main east-west road, and we believe very close to the main river crossing of the River Eden, which by chance is probably very close to where the current bridge across the River Eden is situated. So it's a really tightly controlled bit of land with 1,000 troops to the north, cavalry troops, and then at least 500 to the south in Luguvallium. So it's a very militarized part of the northern frontier, probably the most militarized. So we've always thought this was a very interesting plot of land, and the work we've been doing there since 2017 has just reinforced that idea. So the project itself, we are a grassroots project. I love the fact that we are. We've got this community that's been working on the site now since probably 2022 after the COVID interruption. It started in 2017, and there was about four of us on that first excavation for 4 days. That just ballooned, and we are still excavating on site. And now we're seasoned probably, we have a team of about 450 individuals on site. So it's really grown into something quite special. And why we started, well, we had the floods of Carlisle, so it's been a real positive thing to come out of, one of the darkest days in Carlisle's recent history, other than the club being relegated out of the Football League last week. This was probably another devastating event. But from that, we found our site. So, you know, it was a horrible thing to happen, but some real good stuff came out of it. And if this flood hadn't have happened, we would never have been there in 2017. So as a project and a team, we're now a registered charity. So we've got our site, but we've got ideas well beyond our site. There'll be a legacy. So when we finish at the cricket club site, we want to just feel there's a project waiting to happen somewhere else in Carlisle. We're a lot more than just the cricket club site. So we want to raise the profile of Carlisle. We, in our small way, want to help with helping the economy of Carlisle. We always try and help with the well-being side, with the people welcoming everyone. We allow people to come for 1 day or 1 week, or some people have been for 5 weeks, but there's never, we try to make it as easy as possible for people to join. And we work with lots of different partners, local businesses, the city council, Heritage Lottery. So it's quite a unique project in that respect. So what's the beginning of our story? We have some flints. Well, we have quite a nice group of flints now, going back to the Mesolithic period from our site. But the first real structural things we find are dating to this Hadrianic phase. We keep on coming back to it. This is our main road, with a nice roadside ditch. We'll be opening up a section of this road again in this upcoming season. Another little sideline is we've got this very late stone building straddling the road. You can see these large stone boulders that have been set on the road surface. So we don't know what it is, but we hope to find more about this very late building in the May-June season that's just about to start. And then we've got these tiny little areas of preservation of this Hadrianic bathhouse. We've got one section of wall and a few flagstones from probably the changing rooms. So we know there's a bathhouse there. The finds we've had scattered about also tell us there's a Hadrianic bathhouse there. But as for structural things, it's totally obliterated from the site, other than these tiny little areas, by this monumental Severin building. And that's the thing we've been concentrating on for the last 4 years. So this gives you an idea of the block plan style of this Hadrianic bathhouse. You can see the furnace room here, and this is the drain coming out of it. This is the little area where we had a tiny fragment surviving, and the rest of this in the red hatching is basically a best guess. We're really lucky that these Hadrianic bathhouses follow a very standard plan. So for those of you that know the wall, you'll see similar ones in Chester's, Bewcastle, Ravenglass. They're all over the place. They're pretty similar. There'll be differences, but they're only minor. So it's allowed us to put this best guess plan to what this Hadrianic bathhouse looks like. And really, over the years, we haven't really found much more of it. Although in the last excavation in February, we may have got a robbed out foundation that fits in really well with this projection. The other thing to note is the road. So we've got our main Hadrianic road, and you can see it's parallel with the bathhouse. So that building's there for, well, 80, 90 years, and then it's demolished in the very early 3rd century. And this is our Severin building. This is the thing that's really special with this site. It's a huge 50 meters, 50 meters square, maybe even 60 meters by 50. We've only got the north wall and the south wall, so we still don't know how wide it is. It's truly monumental in scale, and the walls are built quite differently to that Hadrianic bathhouse. They're almost double the size and 3 times as deep. So these are truly huge wall foundations. And for the volunteers that have been working on this project, we spend a lot of time excavating these huge robber trenches. And you can see on this image here, this is the cobble foundation that survives of one of our Severin walls. This is one of the terraces. We have 5. And then to the south of it, we have another wall that's been robbed so heavily that they've even removed the clay and cobble. So the amount of robbing varies from wall to wall, but there's always enough of these ghost walls surviving to allow us to create plans, which is all building up to the reconstruction models we're currently working on. So the black lines are the wall lines of this Severin building. What I've highlighted in red is the area we've been recently working on. So it's really starting to fill in the gaps of this building. So we were working in 4 rooms that we just, for convenience, A, B, C, and D. So we worked on them in February over a 2-week period. So that was really important for just clarifying some of these projected walls. We now know the real walls. Other things to note that we're now learning is this green alignment here is the original Hadrianic alignment. The blue alignment is the Severin alignment. So when they build this new structure, they realign everything. So it's not actually facing this Hadrianic wall. But what we now know is the road, as it extends, the alignment of the road is shifted. So as we head west, the road is now on a slightly different alignment, reflecting the new Severin building. So really interesting. And also we have a new road to the south of our main road here, which is nestled between a ritual area. We have this really well-made foundation, and it's a teasing because we only really had the very northern end of it. We probably have another one of these pillar column bases. We don't know really, but it's a really well-built square structure. We initially thought it was a mausoleum, but we're changing our thinking now. It's to support some sort of column or a statue of some kind in a ritual area. And you look at other bathhouse complexes, and they're quite often associated with ritual areas and temples. So it's a working hypothesis that we've got this monumental Severin building, the road, and then a ritual area, and then a southern road. And then to the south of the southern road, there could be funerary activity. We just don't know. This just gives you an idea of the wall, the preservation we've been finding. In some sections, this is all familiar to a lot of the regular volunteers. This is one of our best preserved sections. So the wall foundations a meter, some places they're 2 meters deep. With the terracing, sometimes it could be 2.5 meters. So they're truly monumental foundations. We excavate a lot of them where the actual stone is totally gone. And what we do is we remove the backfill. So this image on the right just illustrates one of our robber trenches. So sometimes we're not actually excavating the walls. What we're excavating is the ghost of where there was once a wall, but it still gives us lots of really interesting information. This is some of the photographs I took in February. So this gives an idea again of the preservation. This is a nice east-west wall of the Severin building. And this is the hypercore system within that Severin building. But one of the really nice things we found this year was you can just about here, you can see here, we basically have an earlier wall underneath the concrete floor of the Severin bathhouse. This is another fragment of our Hadrianic bathhouse, just a tiny section of it preserved, and it's been cut by another north-south wall, which you can see here. This is another view of room A and B. This is Roman concrete, incredibly well preserved in places. And then here you can see we have a T-junction. We have two walls. Well, it's actually a cross wall. It continues. And it illustrates we have the really nice building stone. And then underneath the nice building stone, we have crude smashed chunks of limestone. And then below that, we have cobbles set on clay. So here you can just see the building technique. So it's built to take a lot of weight. A nice other little thing you can see in this is we've got this little furnace room here, which is a 4th century insertion. So we've got traces of another building that's built on top of the Severin building. And this is one of the best preserved sections of it. So you can see here we have a little flue and a furnace. So here they've basically built within the ruins of the Severin building. Some bits of it are probably still standing. Other bits we now know were demolished. To get an idea of what this 4th century building looked like is nigh on impossible because we've got such a little patchwork of it surviving. We know it's there. We know it's quite large. We know it still had heated rooms. But other than that, it's beyond us at this point to actually put together a reconstruction of the 4th century building. Here again, just another idea of these wall lines we've been looking for. We have concrete floors in here, robber trenches where there was once a wall, another robber trench, another concrete floor. It was beautiful archaeology in February. And this is room B, which is probably the best preserved room we've had. And you can see the beautiful alignment of these hypercourse tiles, but you can see how the alignments get a bit wibbly wobbly as we go along. And it's basically, these 4th century renovations. So some of the floors were still in use, but in other places they've lifted the flags. They've replaced some of the burnt out Severin tiles. Sometimes they use stone tiles. Other times they just use slightly different size clay tiles. So you've got a sequence of at least 3 major renovations to the underfloor heating. And here's another view of our small room, which we called room C. There were a few hypercores surviving, so we know it was actually heated at one point. The floor's been raised, so it's been very heavily disturbed, this room. And again, we've got a lovely section of Severin wall heading east-west, joining the big north-south wall that's been heavily robbed. The other thing that's always been interesting on this site are the drains. Obviously, every building that had a suite of baths have to have a serious set of drains to control the water. Water's coming in with an aqueduct at the top, at the north, and it's leaving through these really well-made drains. And we were really lucky at the very beginning that we found a section that had been basically untouched. They'd survived, and within them, we 100% sampled the drain fill, which produced some of our star finds that I'll speak about later. But you can see here, that's a lovely section of Severin drain. What we've now found is as we go further downstream, the Severin drain is rebuilt. It's rebuilt on a far inferior style and quality, quite shoddy, using bits of reused concrete from the Severin building. And you can see in this one here, instead of the nice flag stones, they've just used this grotty bit of Roman concrete to cap the drain. And interestingly, from this point west, we found very few finds from the fill. So they've emptied the drain at this point, but they didn't empty it further up, which is really odd, and I can't understand why. Another thing we found to the south of this building was this floor surface with a very crude wall, which we now believe is a portico. So this is the south-facing side of this Severn building. So we've got evidence of a mortared surface with almost a dwarf wall. If we saw more of it, we probably might find column bases if they survived. So what we now are pretty certain, this represents a portico running on the south side of the building next to the road. And then this is a view on the south side of the road. So this is our column base, pillar base, recycling some really nice Roman stone on a really heavy clay and cobble foundation. We found a lot of high status finds from the soil around this, which I'll discuss later. And it was a very clean area around it, so there wasn't anything really going on. We excavated a slot through this to find this is yet another terrace. So this has been built up. Then we have a road, which is our new southern road, just appearing in the background of this photograph. So what we found with this road, again, it's been reinstated. It was there at an earlier point, but they've created a terrace, probably in the Severn period, but they've reinstated the road higher up. So we've got basically soil, original, probably Hadrianic road. They've raised the level with this soil and clay, and then they've reinstated the road above it. So it's a lot of effort had been gone into this area to create this flat space on the south side of the road. And you may just be able to see these huge stone slabs on a slight platform. So when it's a possible temple site. That's all we can say now. Possible. It's raised on a platform. It's facing this very clean area with two of these potential pillar bases. So there's something quite unusual going on here. And it doesn't just end with the Roman, the story of this site. We mentioned these robber trenches. The robber trenches are we know there's robber trenches in the Roman period, late Roman period, but the majority of these walls are getting robbed in the 12th, 13th, possibly early 14th century. We've got this dating from medieval pottery that we find within these features. They're not always straight, linear robber trenches. They quarry the site. So we have huge pits. The largest is about 5 meters in diameter. We do have these smaller pits that are things of beauty in their own right. And we've had significant amounts of medieval pottery. And I think we have 16 coins of a medieval date from this period of the site. Now I'll go into the finds. This beautiful flagon was found in this ritual area. We got very excited thinking we had a complete one. As is all the case with these things, you find this beautiful vessel, you excavate carefully around it, and basically that was all there was of it. There was no base, but it's still a beautiful little Roman flagon. Some of the sculptures have been just spectacular from the site. So this is our dolphin head that was found in a small room of this Severn building. So again, we think possibly associated with a water feature within the building, a shrine of some kind. Other examples have also been used as balustrades on elaborate staircases. So again, this is unique. The first one we found in Carlisle. And this came up last season, which is our little Fortuna head. And this was found adjacent to that column base. Again, there's something going on there. It's unusual. And then these were situated on the main road. We think they're from the Severn building, but now we have this ritual area, the other side of the road. They could equally have come from that. We think they're theatre masks. Incredible. They're really powerful bits of sculpture. And Yes, so finding this ritual area on the south side of the roads made me rethink where these have come from. I still like to think they're from the Severn building, but they could quite equally be from this temple or ritual area to the south of the road. Two other things that have come from earlier seasons. There's the Julia Domna inscription that was found actually in 2017 during that initial 4-day excavation, which is one of our star finds. It still is. It's an incredible bit of inscription. And the one I like was the Petriana. You can just see there, Petriana, and then the symbol for 1,000. So this is a gravestone from a cavalryman from the Alla Petriana. It's a beautiful item, and I think it's the first inscription of the Alla Petriana to be found in Stanix, which was the home of the Alla Petriana. Other things, and this has been particularly the case since 2024, is we've got a huge collection of wall plaster. It's now one of the largest in the north of England. We're still working on this, but we're starting to get the design, and it's quite elaborate. Most people just think of it as just whitewashed with a few stripes, but we've got enough of this material now. We're starting to see design styles in different parts of the building. So we're hoping to do some mock-ups of the interiors of some of the rooms. So watch this space. It looks pretty spectacular. We've got lots and lots of gaming counters. These have come from the drains. Um, Over 200 at least. Some of them are reused bits of pottery. Some of them are pebbles. So there's a lot of possible gaming counters, but what I'm showing you here, definitely gaming counters. And we have about 4 dice now from the site, these beautiful little bone dice. And hairpins, well over 400 now, all shapes and sizes, straddling this late Antonine, early Severan period where there's a change in hairstyles from the elaborate ones with the finely carved heads to these more bulbous ones, which reflect a change in hairstyles. Another nice thing we found is this one here, which always looked a bit odd, which is actually upside down. And it's not a hairpin, it's actually a foot of a child's doll. Other things we have are these needles, which there is lots and lots of these needles. We used to think that they represented needlecraft. It was always an odd thing to have in a bathhouse complex. We now think they're to do with the hairstyles, and they would have held wire with beads, because another thing we're finding with the hairpins are beautiful little glass beads. We have some amber, yellow glass, blue glass, all different shapes and sizes. So I think these needles are all to do with these elaborate Severan hairstyles. Other nice finds we've been finding, and this is from the area we'll be revisiting this year. These have all come from this ritual area. We have a patera, which is a high status, well, it would look like a little saucepan for making offerings. A little brooch there, a nice little key ring, and a pipe clay figurine. This is the mother goddess, but we've also have a few of Venus. So I think we have 4 fragments now of these pipe clay figurines, all from this area, either on the road or south of the road. Pottery. Anyone been on the site will know we have lots and lots of pottery. The pottery, again, the more south we go from the Severn building, the more pottery you get, which is also the pottery is earlier, a lot of it than the Severn building. So we have lots of Hadrianic and Antonine pots. So there's different activities going on there. There's more consumption of things in the Hadrianic and Antonine period to the Severn period. Things are changing, and we can see this through the pottery. And this is just a nice view of some of our star bits of pottery. We have the 2 complete beakers. These again look like they're ritual offerings, and they were found again very close to the column base. And some amazing decorated Samian pottery, this orange pottery that comes from Gaul. And we're finding lots and lots of decorated pottery, far more decorated Samian is now appearing south of the road than we found north of the road. Again, it's reflecting what's going on. And this is just a few views of the area we just finished last year. This is again the area we're going to be revisiting. So you can see we're getting masses and masses of pottery. There's a nice greyware flagon. There's a nice greyware jar. And then we have the top of a South Spanish amphora that's just been discarded. And we're finding masses of amphora. So much so in one area, they were using this amphora to create a floor surface. So we're going to be revisiting this. We have a floor basically that's just made of smashed up Roman amphora. And then the imp tiles got us a lot of international attention, very odd things. To this day, people still don't know what exactly they mean. All we can say is it's the property or it's authorized by the imperial court. You get legionary stamps, you get auxiliary stamps, you get the Classis Britannia stamps, but these imp stamps are really a Carlisle thing. There's more in Carlisle than anywhere else. There's a few stray ones being found in Halsteads, I think Ribchester, I think Vindolanda have one, but we're now up to, I think, 200 from Carlisle, and our site is the only place that actually has them in situ, in their original place they were used, and we think they were made just to the north of Carlisle at Scalescuff. Another strange thing we find here are these vaulting tubes. Again, a very early use of them in Roman Britain. They're very unusual things. They come from North Africa. And again, this Severn connection, could there have been some architects from North Africa that brought in this odd technique of building? We'll never know. But again, they're a very odd thing to find. And I think it's telling us that this building, this Severn building, was something a little bit out of the norm. Another thing was this little bronze lion we found. And again, a very high status object. And this is from an actual standard. And this was the standard of the equivalent of, I suppose, the sort of official secret police service. Um, so this would have been on a standard that would have been very elaborate. The only other lion from one of these standards we found in the UK was found in York, which I think is telling, as York was obviously where the Severn Court was based. And it's a mate, this one. You had two different types of these lions on these standards. We've got one sort, and the opposite number has been found in York. We have a nice collection of these lead military seals. We think these are a bit later than the Severn building and probably date to the 4th century rather than the 3rd. We have 6 Legion. The vast majority of them are the Alla Petriana. As you can see, the AEPE, that's the Alla Petriana. Other things we've been finding are beautiful bits of jewellery. Again, these are coming from this area south of the road in this ritual area. Sometimes we're now thinking, can these have been actually ritually deposited rather than just casual losses? We have a lot of these beautiful objects. The other stuff we've been finding are the coins. We're blessed with incredible preservation on a lot of the site. And you can see from these coins, incredible state of preservation. A lot of Carlisle, we have very acidic soils, which is really bad for the coins. We're blessed here where we have very kind soils. And these haven't been considered. This is basically how they appear out the ground. Just stunning. Like I said, we have 825 coins now from the site, 716 of which are Roman. The earliest is dating to about 82 BC, and the latest coin is in the very early 5th century. This just gives you a very brief idea of the date range going way before 43 AD to the very end of the Roman Empire. The Samian pottery, we've got a lovely assemblage now. I know Steve Wadeson's watching this. He's been working on this for months, and it's quite an important assemblage. And we're getting more and more decorated Samian the more work we do south of the road. The other thing we've been doing a lot of work on, and Giecco's been working on these for, well, for at least 2, 3 years now, is the intaglios. We've now got 76 from the site. We added two more last year. Um, they're little bits of, well, they're works of art in their own right. Um, we could have an hour lecture just discussing the intaglio, but they've taken hundreds of hours of people to find. They are tiny. Some of these are 2.5, 3 millimeters. So the only way we find them is by carefully sieving every bit of soil from these drains. So we've been meticulous, and it takes a certain kind of person. You can't rush this stuff. And even when we do it carefully, we still sieve it a second time and we still find things on the second sieve. At one point, we were sieving 3 times and still finding stuff, but the volunteers now are trained up enough now that we're quite comfortable that after the second sieve, we're not missing anything. And there's a close-up of our catalogue of intaglios, which we now believe some of which are actually made in Carlisle. So all this stuff is allowing us to come up with these reconstructions of what's going on site. So we've got this huge Severn building, we have a portico, we have the southern range that had the dolphin in it. You can see the drain highlighted in blue, and then you've got in grey our road. You've got the column base, second column base, and now we've got our second road. And the building in between, I've just put down currently as a stylized temple type building. This is what we'll be focusing on in 2025. And as work progresses from February, we've redone the plan of the Severn building. We've had to spin round the vaulting. So every time we come back, it's given us really important ideas of how the reconstruction can be. So it's not a static thing. This is changing every season. Sometimes it's changing every month, where we're getting more information in. We're working on the post-excavation side. We're getting results back from the laser scans and the photogrammetry. It's all adding to our confidence in these reconstruction models of the site. And this leads me to conclude on what we're hoping to achieve. So you can see our big Severn building at the north, at the top of this view, and the area I've highlighted in brown is our new season. So we'll be looking south of the new road. We'll hopefully include the whole footprint of this potential temple. We'll have another slot across the main Hadrianic road. And importantly, we have, for the first time, we'll have this slot going right the way across the south wall of the Severn building, across the road, through the ritual area, and through our second road. So it's a real ambitious target to basically see what is this ritual area. We've uncovered a lot of it, but we didn't have time to excavate hardly any of this potential temple area. So it's still waiting. We've covered it in a layer of terram. So the first thing I'll be doing next season will be removing this terram to unearth basically where we stopped in 2024. So it's going to be really exciting. And what we don't know is these big post pads of this potential temple, is that a later version? And underneath that layer, have we got actual stone foundations of a primary structure? We just don't know. And what's going on to the south of our new southern road? And do we have a second column base and potentially burials to the south of the southern road? We've got 2 fragments of gravestone. We've got 2 potential cremations, but we've never really found a cemetery. We must be very close to the cemetery. We've just not found it yet. So these are all our goals for this 2025 excavation. Does the portico carry on? And would we potentially find the eastern edge of the Severn building? There's a chance we may just clip it, which would be fantastic on creating the models for this building. Um, so it's going to be incredibly exciting, and I really can't wait to be back on site. So I think that's me done. A very brief overview. And to those of you that heard me talk before, I apologize. You've probably heard this too many times now, but yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. I mean, I to see some of the images kind of all in a row that way, it's just you get a real glimpse, I feel like, into life at that time, and the quality of the intaglios and the coins is really amazing. And exciting because it sounds like the finds kind of haven't stopped since you started working there.
No, they
One
just
yeah.
never fails.
One thing I guess I was wondering, before we go into other questions is, what is the reasoning for why the bathhouse was associated with ritual? Like, does this go throughout the Roman Empire where there's always like ritual sites near the bathhouses?
Yeah, but probably the most famous bathhouse in Britain was in Bath. And there you've got the main bathhouse complex, and immediately opposite the bathhouse, you've got the temples. So if you go to any city in Gaul or Rome, they go hand in hand. So, I get pulled up on calling it a bathhouse.
Hmm.
It's it's a monumental building with heated rooms. So technically, it doesn't fit any model of a bathhouse. You could call it a mansio, maybe, or it could be a very strange, oddball building built for a specific visit by somebody. Um, but the name bathhouse has just sort of stuck. And if anyone picks me up on it, I do say, well, we do have a Hadrianic bathhouse under it, so I'm not technically wrong.
Right. Um, Thank you for that. So one of the questions we had was from Maggie Sims, and she was wondering where was the water supply got from? Was it a stream somewhere uphill? Do you
Well,
have an idea about that?
we know when they built the new bridge in 1816, 1815, 1816, they say they chopped through a Roman aqueduct. So that was documented in local newspapers at the time. So where the cutting is at the top of our site, which makes sense because the water supply would enter the building at the highest point and then get used and leave the building at the lowest point, which would be our drains. So I'm almost certain that the water supply came via an aqueduct from further up the River Eden and from the northeast corner of our building. And we do have a large square tank that we excavated in 2022. So that was possibly a holding tank, like a header tank, to control the water supply. So we've never seen any evidence to the aqueduct, but we know there was something that looked very much like an aqueduct for it to be documented, like I said, in 1816.
Thank you. We had a question here from Christiane, and sorry again for mispronouncing. The Alla Petriana. Can you tell those of us who are not in the know what that means and what it is?
The Alla Petriana were they were from Gaul, which is France, and that's where they were originally recruited from. And the Alla were basically 1,000 strong cavalry regiment. And the prefect, who would be the guy in charge, the head man, it was a very prestigious appointment. So this guy could have been the third, fourth most important Roman official in the whole province. So that's why we think Carlisle probably was the senior partner to Corbridge, because this guy would have been it was where you get posted if you're going fast track to, the highest positions in the Roman Empire. This would have been a very high status appointment. So yeah, they were basically 1,000 strong cavalry. They were the crack troops, and they were there to basically shock and awe the um the people outside of Roman Empire, which would be, in present day Scotland. So they were garrisoned in this fort facing north, and if there was any trouble north of the border, they would quickly deploy and put that trouble down. So they're very well paid as well,
Hmm.
which probably indicates why we're getting so many silver denarii from the site. People think the upper echelons would have been your legionaries, but in terms of pay and spending power, the cavalry weren't much down from being a legionary. They were really well paid troops. They would have lots of disposable wealth, and maybe they had something to do with this building in the fourth century. We just don't know.
Interesting. One of the other things I was wondering too, with your knowledge about other Roman sites in the country, um, the number of finds and I guess the variety of finds from this location. I mean, how does this compare? Is this sort of common to have, again, you've got the walls, you've got the coins, all of these different things. Is there any way to sort of say, this is an unusual amount or an unusual variety of artifacts and features?
No, it is very unusual. When you think the site is only probably, our plot of land is about 70 meters by 50 meters. It's an incredible group of finds. The coins, for instance, I think we've now got, like I said, 716, and from all of Cumbria, from sites, it was in the 2000, I think. So we're almost getting to, after this season, if we get to 1,000, we'll have half as many coins from our one small site than the rest of Carlisle put together. So it's very strange, the coin loss. The intaglios are very unusual. The sculpture is very unusual. So it's a very high status building with lots of things being left on this site that you don't normally get. Before this site, I'd never found an intaglio in my life. The military equipment we're getting from this site isn't really spoken about much. We've got an incredible assemblage now of military fittings. Um, so every season we seem to have a new first on the site. Obviously the heads got lots and lots of attention. There's nothing like them anywhere else. And then the vaulting tubes, they may be not as glamorous as some of the other finds, but again, really unusual. I've not seen them anywhere else in 30 years. They just don't turn up. The imp stamps again, um, a very unusual Carlisle thing. Um, so no, it's an oddball site, but in a good way.
Lucky for Carlisle, and I'm wondering if the cricket club how the cricket club feels about their space and if cricket will ever be played there again.
But they're very supportive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
they're very supportive, and luckily we're not digging on the cricket pitch, so
Okay.
we've we've never stopped play.
We did have Tony ask a question if you thought there was mosaic for this season.
It'd be fantastic to find a mosaic.
Yeah.
That would be, we could then say we got the most northern mosaic in the Roman Empire. But so far we haven't, because we haven't got any of the floors. And where we're working now, south of the road, it's not where I'd expect us to find them unless we do find an earlier temple under this timber phase. Could be anything under there, just we don't know. But it'll be nice to dream.
Right. Or someone sneaks onto the site and puts a few mosaic tiles in there and
Yeah, that's not the same.
I don't think got any ideas.
um, I think that's unless anyone else has any questions, please send them into the chat. I did want to talk a little bit about the screen that's up for those who are not within Carlisle. Again, Ancient Odysseys is working with Frank and team to offer this experience to come and dig. It includes accommodations and meals and other tours. And so it is June 30th to July 5th. They've sort of set aside a special date to have folks come and join them. And for those of you who are on site, if maybe the group will be seeing you this year, sort of joining along and putting mosaics or other things there. But if no one else has any questions, again, I'm going to put into the chat here if anyone has any questions for me, anything about Ancient Odysseys or anything about this. I did manage to actually record this, so I will send a note out to all the attendees. And Frank, of course, I'll send this to you.
Yeah.
And so we'll have a location that people can watch this and get updates in their own time. So thank you again, everyone, for joining at all the different times around the world. Really appreciate it. And look forward to updates next year.
You'll have updates in the next 3 weeks.
Okay, all right. So then we'll post updates
Yeah.
as well. Thank you
Okay.
again for everyone, and have a great rest of your day.